Cimoooooooo. What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. It's time again for another episode of Banlist Roulette. Ever wonder how Konami decides what cards go on or off the Forbidden and Limited list? Well, let me go ahead and give you some insight into that decision-making process. We're going to take some of the most highly contested, highly controversial cards of the format, spin them on the wheel, and see where they are going to end up for the September 2020 Forbidden and Limited list. That's not too far away, so let's go ahead and see what happens. But first, let's address the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that whether the wheel's 100% correct or 0% correct, it ultimately may not matter. We haven't had any premier competitive events, and since that's where most of the data gets taken from when it comes to making some of these decisions, and since Konami decides to completely ignore any sort of online format when it comes to any sort of data collection, then we really can't expect to have a ban list because we've already seen them do this once before. They just took a few cards and made them unlimited just to spice things up, I suppose, but we're still gonna have fun nonetheless, so let's see what happens. So let's kick things off with Block Dragon. Tons of people want to see Block Dragon banned just because of the power that it adds to a deck like Emancipator. Funny enough, it also supports Megalith, which has made a huge showing as of late, but I think Megalith is actually a little bit more dependable without Block Dragon than Emancipator, and I think hitting Block Dragon would hurt the deck a lot. Would it be unplayable? I'm not entirely sure, but it would definitely dissuade people from wanting to play the strategy in the sheer volume that players are, and it would kind of remove a rather degenerate combo deck, at least from the top tier of contention, and make it a little bit more fair. But it's not up for me to decide, it's up to the wheel, so let's see where Block Dragon stacks up. Well, Block Dragon is not going anywhere anytime soon. Now, another card that players are just begging to get banned is Crystron Fibrax. This card has demonstrated just how powerful it is time and time again. This is like the third most played card in the online environment, so if that isn't a testament to its power, I don't know what else is. Yes, this card does help a lot of strategies, not just the top tier ones, but when you incorporate it into some of the top tier strategies, it just goes over the top and really widens the power gap even further beyond what it already is. Crystron Needle Fiber is essentially just the linchpin in all of these combos, and by removing it just like we removed cards from the past like Firewall, you can try to hit the cards around it, but it's really not going to work because in the end, Fibrax is what needs to be hit. But it's not up to me, it's up to the wheel, so let's see where Fibrax ends up. Okay, so Crystron Fibrax would go to 1. That would accomplish absolutely nothing. Now, by extension, another card that is just as powerful as Crystron Fibrax and is actually banned in the OCG is Link Cross. People make the argument that if Fibrax doesn't get banned, Link Cross probably should. I just think they both should go, but at the very least, let's hit one or the other. But Link Cross is definitely another candidate, especially after you go Fibrax and can just get rid of it to get more tokens onto the field to link off into and just do so many absurd plays. This card just has to go. I mean, there are so many reasons why it does. It really needs no explanation. So let's see what the wheel does with Link Cross. Okay, so Link Cross going to 2. Well, that is just as worthless as Fibrax going to 1, but I guess it's at 2? But moving on, we're going to talk about a group of cards that a lot of people have been discussing lately when it comes to whether or not these types of cards should be allowed, and I'm talking about cards like True King of all Calamities. A card like this that just provides a lingering effect that basically makes it so that your opponent can't play the game, in my eyes, and a lot of people's as well, is rather unfair. And typically when these decks can assemble a monster like this with ease on turn 1, it really isn't fun for anyone. Yeah, you can make the argument that combo decks are equally as degenerate, but I think it's a little bit different because at least with the combo decks, there's a level of interactivity and you have to be at least throwing your cards into negations. It at least allows you to play, as opposed to cards like Calamities, which don't even give you that privilege. So it's a type of card design that I'm not necessarily a fond of, as well as a lot of other people. So let's see what the wheel does with True King of all Calamities. Okay, Calamities getting banned. That might be the first good thing to happen on this list. exist. Now, in tandem with that, another card that's about on par with Calamities, although it's debatable which one is better, is Utopic Zexel. Thanks to the Numeron support, this card is everywhere, and again, it's just another card with a lingering effect that really is no fun for anyone to play against. I definitely think that even though there are outs to these types of cards, that doesn't justify a card like this existing in the game. I think the worst type of card design imaginable is cards that physically do not allow your opponent to play the game and even have a chance of doing anything. So let's see where Utopic Zexel ends up. And it's going to 2. Man, I should really just remove the semi-limited list from this wheel for how much I despise it. Now, continuing on with cards that don't allow your opponent to play the game, next up is Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. Now, this one's a bit debatable because this is probably the least oppressive of the bunch, but the thing is, any deck that can incorporate Dark Attribute or Dragon-type monsters, thanks to Union Carrier, can enable this and pretty much shut your opponent out of the extra deck entirely. Some people would say this is unfair. I think this is, again, the least of the offenders, but it's still kind of annoying and very difficult to deal with at times, and especially because it locks out an entire mechanic of the game. That just doesn't really seem too fun. So let's see where Dragon Buster Destruction Sword ends up. And Dragon Buster Destruction Sword isn't going anywhere. But moving on, now I have a couple of cards that I don't think a lot of people are going to have on their radar, but I definitely think it warrants discussion, and that is Red Eye's Dark Dragoon and a few other cards that supplement it. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, Cimo, Red Eye's Dark Dragoon isn't even out yet, and by the time it is released, the ban list is going to come shortly after, so why would they immediately hit a card even though it was just released? Now, I'm not saying to ban the card, but I definitely think it should get limited, and the reason for this is because the OCG has already limited it to 1 for good reason, because this is a format warping card. This is one of the most absurdly broken cards that Konami has ever released, and it basically forces players to deck build around it. It is that good. It got to the point in the OCG where people were playing multiple Dragoon that if they outed their opponent's Dragoon after their opponent outed their own, they could slap down a second one and basically force that checkmate once again. So I don't think that dynamic is healthy. I'm okay with Dragoon being like at 1, but I don't think having multiples is a good idea, and the OCG's already identified this and appropriately taken the correct measure. So let's see where Dragoon ends up. It's probably going to be 3, but I figured we might as well try. And the wheel never disappoints. Now, a couple of other cards we can still discuss here are cards like Predaplant Verte Anaconda. This is the card that people use to access Dragoon, so I still think it's worth giving it a shot to see if we can at least limit this card as well. Okay, that goes to 1. I guess that's slightly good. It kind of does something, I guess. Not really, but the third and final card I wanted to discuss is Red Eye's Fusion, because in the OCG, players were just maxing out on this because it's still great to hard draw, and it ensures that if you do get your 1 copy, you still have some copies in the deck to send off of Verte Anaconda. So let's just give Red Eye's Fusion a quick spin. And that's going to 1 as well. Now, this is nice, but unfortunately, it didn't hit the problem card at its core. Now, there's one card I really want to be unlimited this time around, and that is ABC Dragon Buster. We never had the opportunity to play ABC at full power under Master Rule 5 because Konami preemptively hit ABC Dragon Buster. For some reason, I guess ABC is just too good, but I think ABC has definitely been power crept by far considering its age in the terms of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But since we only have the online environment to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And since the last ban list gave us cards like Multi-Faker and Unicorn, just put Buster to 3 and see what happens. There aren't any events anyway. I highly doubt we're going to have events by the time we should be getting the next ban list. So put Buster to 3, see what happens, and nothing will. And then guess what? When we actually can go back to events again, people can mess around with ABC. I just think that's fun. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because ABC is such a cool deck, but let's see where the wheel puts ABC Dragon Buster. And as per tradition, I like to end every episode of Banlist Roulette with everyone's favorite and most controversial card, Maxi. This is a card that I definitely hope does not go to anywhere other than 0 because it's one of the most poorly designed cards ever made. The dynamic that this card forces is just horrible and definitely something that no one wants to play against, and obviously there's going to be people on both sides of the fence in this argument, but for the health of this format moving forward, I think the last thing we need is something like Maxi going to anywhere other than banned. So, fingers crossed, let's see what happens. You know, I don't know if I should be happy or sad about this. I'm happy it's not at 3, but I'm sad that it's not at 0. I think this might maybe be worse than Maxi being at 3. And the reason I say that is because then it just becomes a one of, and if your opponent has it, you are going to be the saltiest person alive if they drop it on you and then win because of it. But guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of Banlist Roulette. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on what you are looking forward to hopefully getting hit on the upcoming ban list, or if we're even going to get a ban list at all. Who knows? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video entertaining, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again. We'll see you next time.